Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're continuing having a look at the suggestions past the devs for September 2025, and in this one we're going to have a look at the rest of the aircraft. There's a bunch of pretty cool propeller planes here, and generally, at least for me, I find the propeller stuff a little bit more interesting, so it'll be nice to have a look at it. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and also like the video. Let's get started. The first vehicle is the TB3AM34P, which is a hell of a name. The TB3, which originated from the TB1 twin-engine bomber in the 20s, is a four-engine bomber crafted by the Tupolev Design Bureau. One notable characteristic of this aircraft is its complete construction using aluminium alloy skin. Additionally, it had various variations such as torpedo bombers, transport aircraft, aerial refueling, rocket-assisted flight, parasitic aircraft mounts, along with other test aircraft. In 1937, China received 6 TB34AM34RNs. These were aircraft from the Soviet Union. These aircraft were assigned to the 19th Squadron of the 8th Battalion and underwent training at Langzhou Airport. However, they were not deployed for combat and were solely utilized as transport planes until the end of November. Unfortunately, one of the aircraft crashed during training, and the remaining 5 planes were operated by both Chinese and also Soviet pilots and redirected to Nanchang. It was there they were spotted by Japanese reconnaissance planes and subsequently targeted by Japanese aircraft on the 13th of December. While some of the planes managed to divert to Nanchang before the air attack, others were pursued by Japanese planes and subjected to bombing. As a result, 2 TB3s were completely destroyed and 2 suffered severe damage. Following repairs, the 3 remaining aircraft continued to fulfill transportation duties. Guo Jiaojiao and Zhang Jun's 2 Chinese pilots embarked on a flight from Langzhou to Han with a complete complement of passengers. However, while passing through the Gansu province, they encountered a major setback when the outer engine failed. Given the treacherous mountainous terrain ahead, their only option was to turn back and head towards Langzhou. Tragically, during their return journey, the engine suddenly malfunctioned, resulting in a devastating fire that caused the wings to break apart. The plane subsequently crashed into a mountain, leading to the loss of all but 2 of the 25 members of the Soviet Aviation Volunteer Corps who were on board. In 1939, a TB-3 aircraft underwent training at the Chengdu airport. However, during the landing process, the plane veered off course due to strong crosswinds and collided with the ground. Regrettably, this incident resulted in the destruction of the aircraft and the loss of all lives on board. Consequently, the use of TB-3 planes was discontinued following this tragic event. We also have a cool plane for Italy, the Reggiane 2005 MM495 VDM. The origins of the RE2005 project are the same that led to the generation of its direct competitors, such as the Machi C205V, the 205N, and also Fiat's G55 Centauro. The Regia Aeronautica ordered 2 prototypes registered MM494 and also 495, as well as a static cell for load tests, and assigned to the Reggio Emilia company 2 examples of the DB605A1 engines ordered directly from Germany. Later, this engine was produced by Fiat and was called the 1050 RC58 Typhoon. At the end of October 1942, the second prototype, registered MM495, flew, and immediately afterward it was sent to Guadonia for military flight tests. On November 16, 1942, the ministry announced the first order for 16 planes called Series 0, and the new aircraft would be assigned the military serial number MM092343 up to 092358. Several changes were made during development, in addition to the fact that there were plans for particular versions, which however remained only on paper. Leaving aside the modifications required during the normal performance-enhancing operations of any prototype, the substantial modifications made on subsequent pre-series aircraft mainly concern the nose. The Sagittario MM494 was subjected to various changes in the design and shapes of the slits that appeared in the upper part of the hood, of the nose and front of the windshield, as well as substantial interventions in the canopy. Initially, the windshield was set back while the dashboard and driver's seat were moved closer to improve the total visibility for the pilot. On the pre-series aircraft, a roof, further reduced in size, was also adopted, which was identifiable by the presence of only 2 upper lenses instead of the original 3 pieces. There were also a notable evolution with relative modifications for what concerned the armament of the Reggiane aircraft. A first modification was made with 3 Breda Safat 12.7mm machine guns placed in the upper part of the muzzle, with 1 firing through the crankshaft. This configuration was later changed by replacing the central Breda Safat with the 20mm Mauser MG151-20A cannon and the addition of 2 other 12.7mm wing weapons. The Regia Aeronautica approved the solution with 5 weapons, but demanded that the 4 machine guns all fire through the propeller. Engineer Long He then suggested installing the 2 20mm Mauser wing guns in the wings, a solution that guaranteed a greater volume of fire and a greater reserve of ammunition. The suggestion was discussed and then adopted in the production setup. Also, for the production aircraft, the installation of 3 external attachment points for bombs and other full armaments was also done. Another obvious change that concerned only the prototype aircraft was the disappearance of the cracks in the central section of the flaps on the 494 aircraft and the adoption of a propeller nose design by Messerschmitt on the 495 model, also known as the VDM electric propeller, that led to the new modified DB605A1M engine. On the 18th of February 1943, the Germans compared a bunch of aircraft together: the G55, the MC-205, the Reggiane 2005, the Bf-109G4, and also the Focke-Wulf 198-5. They concluded to try to modify the 2005, even if they found out that the G55 had satisfied the requirements better than the 2005, and was the winner from the competition between the G55, the 205, and of course the 2005. The next vehicle is for France, and it's really cool. It's the Potez-CAMS 141, the Antares. The Potez-CAMS 141 was a response to a 1935 requirement of the French Navy for a long-range naval patrol aircraft. Potez, after having taken over Chantiers Aéromaritimes de la Seine in 1933, found itself in a good place to try and get the contract. CAMS, after all, had been a firm specializing in the building of hydroplanes. This contract was the perfect opportunity to apply the newly acquired knowledge and try to make a profit from it. The design was drawn up in 1936 by Maurice Hurel and his team in Sartrouville. Assembly of the first prototype, named Antares, started 1 year later, in 1937, and the plane would eventually have its maiden flight in January of 1938. Interestingly enough, this plane was the first hydroplane that was made by Potez, and at the same time the last military aircraft that CAMS would make. The plane was thereafter flown to San Rafael, where it received its defensive armament of 5 7.5mm machine guns in several locations. In June of 1939, it was handed over to the French Navy, where it officially entered service in September of the same year. It would fly its first patrol mission on the 20th of September. The plane performed admirably, and sizable orders soon followed. However, the outbreak of and developments in World War II made these orders scale down considerably. Command realized that long-range flying boats had a very low loss rate, and therefore a smaller order would suffice. Production was started, but by the fall of France in 1940, no production model was finished, and the Antares forever remained the only one of its kind. Antares became the property of the Vichy government, which painted it in their colours and set it off to Dakar to become part of Squadron E4. From there, it flew several patrol missions over the Atlantic, but no noteworthy events occurred in that time. After the Allies landed in North Africa and the Vichy French troops joined them into the Free French, the plane once again switched sides in the war. The plane would continue to fly patrols from Dakar, where on the 2nd of June 1943, it would manage to sink the German U-105 submarine. Allegedly, it's the only French-built aircraft to sink a German submarine in World War II, though some reports mention a second sinking in the opening stages of the war by a different type of aircraft. The plane was eventually retired in early 1944, after 1,800 flight hours due to a lack of spare parts, much to the disappointment of its crew. The next suggestion is not for a plane, it's for a missile, specifically the RB-27, which is the AIM-26B Falcon, and this would be for the J-35XS and also the future edition of the J-35F and also the J. The RB-27 is an export variant of the AIM-26B Falcon, which was an American-made radar-guided air-to-air missile. The primary user of this missile was used on the Saab J-35F Draken and also the J-35J respectively, but the J-35XS was also able to be equipped with these missiles. The Swedes, already way back in 1958, were discussing and negotiating with the Americans in the regards of acquiring new types of air-to-air missiles for the upcoming J-35F Draken variant, which the requirements of the missile was to be able to engage Soviet bomber aircraft at high altitude, long distances as well, and also in all types of weather conditions and during night operations. Their initial plan that Sweden had was to only acquire the AIM-4 Falcons, the GAR-1 with a semi-active radar seeker and the GAR-2 with an IR seeker respectively. However, due to the low explosive yield which the missile had for the semi-active radar version of the AIM-4, the Swedish Air Force and also government opted instead on acquiring the more powerful AIM-26B Falcon, which was the GAR-11. This would be equipped with a semi-active radar seeker, which would be compatible with the PS-01 sighting radar, which were to be equipped on the J-35F and also J. However, due to the AIM-26 Falcon being originally equipped with a nuclear warhead, the missile was modified and re-equipped with a conventional warhead instead. The Swedish Air Force did also acquire the AIM-4 Falcon with the IR seeker, but instead of the GAR-2, which was originally planned, they instead bought the GAR-4 variant. The now designated RB-27, or AIM-26B, or HM-55, was license purchased and produced by Saab, Bofors, and also LM Ericsson, depending on all of the different parts of the missile, and were introduced to the Swedish Air Force in 1965. The RB-27 would see active service in the Swedish Air Force up till the Saab J-35s were completely phased out of service in 1999. For Israel, we have a MiG-21, the MiG-21 F-13 007. On the 16th of August 1966, Munir Redfer, an Iraqi Air Force pilot of Assyrian Christian descent, defected to Israel in a top-secret Mossad operation known as Operation Diamond. In the mid-1950s, Arab countries began acquiring Soviet weapons through arms deals with the communist bloc, creating a major intelligence gap for Israel, particularly regarding air defense and also aircraft systems. To close this gap, the Mossad was tasked with acquiring a Soviet aircraft. However, its mission repeatedly failed over the years, as the jets were stationed deep in enemy territory and guarded by loyalist regime pilots. By late 1962, Israeli intelligence discovered that the Soviet Union had supplied Arab nations with modern MiG-21 fighter jets. The urgency of the mission increased significantly as the Fishbed was one of the most advanced Soviet fighter interceptors. Recognizing the strategic value of the MiG-21, Israeli Air Force Commander Ezer Weizman requested that Mossad chief Meir Amit secure one at all costs. The operation unfolded like something out of a James Bond film. The Mossad began identifying and approaching Iraqi pilots who might be willing to defect. Eventually, they approached Redfer, a pilot marginalized due to his Christian background and disillusionment with the government's actions in northern Iraq. After over a year of secret meetings and negotiations, including a covert visit to Israel and flying with Weizman himself in a Meteor F-8, Redfer agreed to deliver the aircraft. In return, he demanded the safe extraction of his family, $1 million, a lifelong job, and also full Israeli citizenship. On the 16th of August 1966, after receiving a green light signal from Israel by playing the song Marhabatan, Marhabatan on Kol Yisraeli radio, Redfer took off, disobeying direct orders and flew towards Jordanian airspace. Skillfully evading radar detection over both Iraq and also Jordan, he entered Israeli skies. The code phrase "Aladdin calls Boston" was transmitted to confirm his approach, after which two Mirage 3 CJs, the Shahak fighters, intercepted him. Led by Mordecai Hod and wingman Ran Ronan, the pilots greeted him midair and guided him to Hatzor Air Base. At 8 a.m., the Iraqi MiG-21 nearly out of fuel, landed safely. Operation Diamond was a success. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecovo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.